All right, Chapter 8 of The Fall of Fergal. The Tap and Type Grand Finals were introduced by the chairman of Tap and Type, Count Middock Silverman. Count Middock wore a pinstripe suit, but the stripes must have been drawn with a pretty thick pin because they were pretty thick stripes. He stood at the front of the stage in the Dell's Empress conference suite and explained to the audience how the competition would proceed. "Above my head are 4 giant screens," he said, though you'd have had to have your eyes shut or been blind to miss them. "And each screen is connected to the keyboard of an individual finalist. That way we'll be able to see each and every letter appear as they type." There was a ripple of applause, mainly from Tap and Type employees, who thought it was safer to clap at everything their chairman said, just in case he was offended if they didn't. Each screen was labeled with a contestant's name. Top left read G large, bottom left P snoot, top right A malting, and bottom right L McNally. There had been some discussion between the organizers as to whether it should have been L.F. McNally, her first name being LaFay, but it was decided that it was fairer if they were all given just one initial each. Here's a picture of the guy in charge here. Count Silverman went on to explain that it was a knockout competition. At the end of each round of typing, the contestant with the lowest score would drop out of the competition. This meant that the final round would be a head-to-head between the 2 best typists, but there'd be only one winner. On the word winner, the audience applauded the chairman once again. Now it was Malcolm's turn to speak. "The first round is dictation," he announced, "so that no single contestant can have the slightest advantage of being familiar with the piece read out to them or of having accidentally or otherwise," his eyes came to rest on Graham Large, "seen it written down beforehand. Our 4 grand finalists will be typing the words of our special guest, who will be making them up as he goes along." Malcolm paused to catch his breath. "So let's give a big Tap and Type welcome to ventriloquist and beat poet, Hieronymus Peach." Mr. Peach, yes, that Mr. Peach, the one with the great big mustache, bounded onto the stage with his valise in his hand. He saw the McNallys in the second row, behind the Large family and friends who'd taken up the whole front row on each side of the central aisle, and gave them a special wink. "He didn't tell us he'd be here," Fergal whispered loudly to Jackie. "Shh," said Jackie. "He said we'd meet again." "Now the rules are simple," said Malcolm. "In this first round, Hieronymus Peach will make up 3 poems on subjects chosen by the audience. The contestants will type as he speaks." He turned to the 4 contestants, seated at 4 separate desks with 4 separate keyboards and screens. "Are you ready, Tap and Type grand finalists?" "Ready," they said together, as rehearsed beforehand. Graham Large added a sneer and a thumbs up to his supporters. "Good luck, each and every one of you. May the best typist win." There were cheers and claps, this time more from the finalists' families and friends from the Tap and Type employees. Malcolm wasn't the chairman, so they didn't need to suck up to him. There's a picture of him coming on stage with his mustache. "Come on, my boy," boomed a voice from the front row. No prizes for guessing who that must have been. The only boy in the competition was Graham Large, so that must have been his father, Mr. David Large of Large Lunches. Jackie looked over to him. He looked like an even fatter, more perfumed and coiffured version of the boy on stage whom LaFay had told her so much about. Coiffured means his hair had been made to look really lovely. "So let's choose a topic for the first poem. Any suggestions?" Malcolm asked the audience. "Holes!" shouted Fergal. "The moon!" shouted Jackie. "Prize roses!" shouted a smartly dressed woman in tweeds who later turned out to be Peggy Snoot's mom. "Doggies!" shouted a little boy sitting on his own near the back. "Doggies," said Malcolm with a little nod. He turned to Mr. Peach, who was already rummaging in his valise and pulling out a glove puppet in the shape of a black Scotty dog. "Mr. Peach, please make up your poem. Contestants, please type as he speaks." Suddenly the dog appeared to be singing, "Don't let your doggy do, doggy do's, period. Don't let your doggy do, doggy do's, period. For if he does doggy do's, comma, then he'll end up in the news, period. So don't let your doggy do doggy doos! Exclamation point. The Scotty dog glove puppet bowed, the audience cheered, and everyone had their eyes fixed on the screens. Perfect scores to all contestants, Malcolm announced as Mr. Peach put the puppet back in his valise. This isn't going to be as boring as I thought, said Albie, who was really hoping that his sister would win and had been really looking forward to the bus journey and coming to the capital. It was just the typing part he hadn't been so thrilled about, and who could really blame him? The next topic chosen by Malcolm from suggestions from the audience was nightmares. Mr. Peach produced a glove puppet that looked like a gargoyle, a hideous head carved in stone. When the head began to speak, it somehow sounded old and evil, and Fergal found it hard to believe that it was really the same Mr. Peach who'd just made the Scotty dog appear to speak and the snake appear to talk on the previous day. At night, when half the world is sleeping, comma, into your dreams this thing comes creeping, period. Inside your head its thoughts invade with flashes of fear from its slashing blade, exclamation point. The nightmare seeps into your mind and leaves no pretty thoughts behind, period. If you can't escape its deadly grasp, comma, this gasp of air, the gargoyle puppet appeared to make a desperate attempt to gulp down air, could be your last, period. With that, the hideous head fell from the ventriloquist's hand and lay on the bare boards of the stage, still panting for breath. Those in the audience who'd spotted this leaned forward with a gasp, then broke into loud cheers. This Hieronymus Peach was a crowd pleaser. In that poem, Anna Malting had put an apostrophe in its and had left out the H in behind because she'd been typing too quickly. Peggy Snoot had spelled seeps with an A. With one poem to go in this first round, Graham Large and LaFay McNally hadn't made a single mistake. For those of you who enjoy the gruesome, gory bits, thank you for your patience. You're probably far more interested in what happened to Fergal's lifeless body when the ambulance completed its journey than you are in the typing competition. Now, I could say tough luck, but jumping forward again has advantages for all you readers. If we can get a little more of the nasty stuff out of the way now, then we don't have to save it all up until the end. Doing it this way, we've already had Fergal fall out the window, and we've already had him land on the pavement, or sidewalk, or whatever you want to call it. And we've already had him declared dead by the medical examiner and picked up by the ambulance. If we could just get his body to the morgue, then we could get back to some of the nicer jolly stuff with him still alive. This way, when you reach page 123, you won't go away feeling really, really depressed, but will have gotten used to the idea that poor little Fergal McNally is as squashed as a bug underfoot. So, to the morgue. The ambulance pulled up at the back entrance of the Sacred Heart Hospital and backed straight up to the doors leading down to the morgue. Morris, the paramedic, jumped down and opened the rear door of his vehicle. He slid out the stretcher bearing Fergal in the black zipped-up body bag and laid it on a gurney, which isn't an island near Jersey, but a trolley on wheels. It had started to rain, and the pitter-patter of raindrops on the body bag sounded to the paramedic like someone drumming their fingers on a body bag. He hoped it wasn't coming from inside because there was no way that this DOA, dead on arrival, wasn't DOA, dead on arrival. Not after the stain he'd left on the pavement. He banged the gurney through a pair of swinging doors into the dry hospital. Now inside an old elevator, he pulled the folding doors closed and punched a button, and the contraption lurched downward, taking him and Fergal McNally's lifeless body to the bowels of the hospital. Morris wheeled the body along a dingy, ill-lit corridor where badly insulated pipes lined the ceiling, into the pathology lab. The pathologist was nowhere to be seen, but sitting in the corner reading a magazine was a scruffy-looking man wearing a white coat. It was the assistant pathology lab assistant. "Hi, Morris," said the assistant pathology lab assistant, glancing up from an article on caring for your cacti. "Hi, Dennis," said the ambulance man. "What have you got for us today?" asked Dennis. He put down his magazine and wandered over to the body bag. Here's a picture of them. "A young kid fell out of a hotel window," said Morris. "Terrible shame." "Terrible," agreed Dennis, trying to look serious rather than bored. This was only a summer job, and he usually spent his summer selling ice cream over in Girton Park. He had been hoping to sell ice cream again that year, but his cousin Barney had beaten him to the job, so he'd had to find something else to do, which is how he came to be working in the basement of the Sacred Heart. "Where's the doc?" asked Morris. The doc is what they all call the pathologist who is in charge of the morgue. As well as telling everyone else what to do, which she was very good at, by the way. It was also her job to cut people open and work out exactly what they had died of by looking at the bits. I don't know about you, but I'm quite eager to change the subject. With no one else around, Morris had to make do with Dennis's, the assistant pathology lab assistant's, signature. The reason why the ambulance man was a little reluctant to get Dennis to sign was that a pathology lab assistant was someone a little more important than a monkey and just about as well respected as a hospital-trained cleaner. An assistant pathology lab assistant came somewhere below a monkey, and if that monkey was circus-trained, in the respect department, but he did get paid more than a regular supply of bananas. Dennis signed the ROD, receipt of deceased, form and helped Morris lift the body in the bag onto a stainless steel table. That done, the ambulance man began wheeling the now empty stretcher on the gurney back down the corridor toward the rickety old elevator, and Dennis got back to reading his article on cacti, which is more than one cactus. What we could do in the meantime is get back to the point in the story where the first round of the typing competition was still underway, with Fergal in the audience, still very much alive.